In 1960, the Soviet Union believed its skies were sealed, protected, untouchable. For years, Soviet engineers, generals, and scientists were confident that no foreign aircraft could penetrate their airspace without being detected and destroyed. Their radar networks were vast. Their air defenses were layered. Their confidence was absolute. And then, one morning, that certainty quietly collapsed. Not in an explosion, not in a battle, but in a hangar, standing face to face with something they were never supposed to see. What lay before them did not look like a normal airplane. It looked wrong. Too thin. Too fragile. Too impossible. This was the moment Soviet engineers realized the United States had been flying over their country for years, unseen. The aircraft was the Lockheed U-2. Before that day, the U-2 was a ghost. Developed in total secrecy by the United States, it was designed not to fight, not to intimidate, but to observe. To fly higher than any interceptor. Higher than Soviet radar was designed to track. Higher than their doctrine had prepared them for. While the Cold War raged below, the U-2 quietly crossed borders at altitudes no one believed were practical, gathering intelligence that shaped American strategy at the highest levels. In Washington, the aircraft was considered risky, but necessary. In Moscow, its existence was unthinkable. Soviet air defense doctrine was built around the idea that no aircraft could operate safely above a certain ceiling. Fighters couldn't reach it. Missiles weren't reliable at that altitude. And yet, the United States had built an aircraft that lived entirely in that forbidden zone. Not briefly, but routinely. Calmly. Methodically. When the U-2 was finally brought down over Sverdlovsk, it wasn't triumph that followed, it was confusion. Soviet engineers were rushed in to examine the wreckage. And what they found stunned them. The aircraft wasn't heavily armored. It wasn't fast. It wasn't aggressive. It was elegant. Long, slender wings built for endurance. Lightweight materials optimized for altitude. Systems designed not for combat, but for reliability and precision. The engineering philosophy was completely different from what they were used to. Where Soviet designs favored robustness and brute force, the U-2 was built around efficiency, planning, and confidence in technology. Reports from Soviet engineers described disbelief. Some initially assumed it was a one-off experiment. Others suspected deception, that the Americans must have exaggerated its capabilities. But as they examined the components, the truth became impossible to deny. This aircraft wasn't experimental. It was operational. And it had been flying over the Soviet Union for years. What shocked them most wasn't just that the United States had built such an aircraft, it was how calmly it had been used. The U-2 wasn't a desperate gamble. It was part of a broader system. Satellites would come later, but the mindset was already there, intelligence dominance through innovation. For American engineers, the U-2 represented something deeper than hardware. It was proof that planning, industry, and scientific freedom could outpace secrecy and fear. While Soviet resources were spread thin trying to defend every possibility, the United States focused on one impossible problem, and solved it. The consequences were immediate. Soviet air defense doctrine was rewritten. Missile development accelerated. Espionage priorities shifted. And, quietly, an unspoken realization set in, the technological gap was real, and it was dangerous. The Cold War had not been balanced on equal footing. Not anymore. Years later, Soviet officials would admit that the discovery of the U-2 changed how they viewed American capabilities. It wasn't just about surveillance. It was about mindset. About a nation willing to invest in ideas that sounded impossible, and then make them real. The U-2 never fired a shot. It never dropped a bomb. Yet its impact was profound. Because in that moment, standing inside a Soviet hangar, staring at an aircraft they never believed could exist, engineers realized something that would echo throughout the rest of the Cold War. The United States wasn't just competing. It was watching. And in the Cold War, being seen was dangerous, but being unseen was power.